Hello and welcome to this edition of Standard Deviation, my column and video series. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, Deputy Editor at ThePrint, and I'm going to be talking to you about my latest column on how the Modi government is now coming face to face with a dual economic problem. On the one hand, all of the good economic, people-friendly reforms that the government has brought in, of which there are several, will see benefits reaching the people only a few years down the line as they are more longer term reforms. On the other hand, a lot of the economic pain that the people have been feeling has so far been forgiven but seems to now be becoming a more significant issue in people's minds as the 2024 general elections get nearer. So let's start with the reforms and then we'll get to the pain points. The most important economic reform the Modi government will likely be remembered for is the implementation of GST. On a policy level, it has many implications. A single pan-India tax regime, certainty over rates, and a marked shift in the relationship between the centre and states. The people, however, will remember Modi for GST simply because of the ubiquity of the tax. Every bill you pay carries the word GST at the bottom. It's hard to miss. What is easy to miss, however, is the benefit for the people from GST. Taxes are a tricky thing politically. People will only ever hate the government for taking a portion of their money. It's remarkably hard to convince most people that their tax money is what makes the nation function. What makes it even harder is that whatever lowering of prices GST might have brought in, because GST rates are lower than the rates that were there in the previous regime, is undone due to inflation. So all said and done, GST has only now entered its mature phase, where real benefits in terms of streamlined return filing and lower harassment by the taxman can become possible. After all, even the state governments were paid compensation for the first 5 years, which indicates the kind of work in progress nature of GST so far. The problem for the Modi government, however, is that not enough people will see their tax compliance easing before the 2024 general elections. Another major reform the Modi government has implemented, the benefit of which is coming too late for any sort of political impact, is the cleanup of the banking system. The asset quality review of the banking sector was done in 2015, which showed that numerous bad loans had been hidden in previous years. This has systematically been cleaned up, and the non-performing assets ratios have all been steadily improving. When the ratios were bad, the banks had almost completely stopped lending to corporates until their balance sheets could be cleaned up. They have now been cleaned up. Now, once the private sector decides that it's time to begin investing again, they'll find the banks are ready and able to provide them funds. But even if this credit expansion to big corporates begins today, it's too late for there to be any real impact in terms of new investments and job creation before May 2024. The Income Tax Department's Faceless Assessment Scheme of 2020, aimed at anonymizing tax assessment, is another way the Modi government can make a real positive impact on people's lives in a way that they will notice. Removing the taxman from the picture, having a computer do the assessment, and anonymizing the taxpayer and the taxman when human intervention is needed is in theory a great way to reduce tax harassment. In reality, there's been a huge pushback from the tax officials who feel that their avenues to make a quick buck have been severely curtailed. They have found ways to game this system. It'll take a few more years of strict enforcement by the Ministry of Finance to close these loopholes. More years than Modi 2.0 has before it. The Ujjwala scheme, which provided free LPG connections to the masses, will similarly start showing real benefits only some years from now, when awareness of the health benefits of clean cooking fuel becomes entrenched enough that people choose it even if it's more expensive than the dirtier alternatives. Even the work the government did in providing Jan Dhan bank accounts and linking them with mobile numbers and Aadhaar saw real, tangible benefits for the people coming in only about 5 years after work started on the program. It was only during the pandemic and through the support the government could provide in terms of free food and cash that people actually saw a real benefit from this Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile trinity. But the government is now rightly rolling back the pandemic related support. And so it's anybody's guess whether people will remember it next year, come election time. So we've talked about how a lot of the gains from the reforms will be felt only later. Now let's come to the pain. Economic hardship seems to have a similarly long gestation period. That is, only prolonged distress starts translating into electoral issues. That is, relatively recent distress is forgiven and only seems to become a political issue if it goes on for a while. The recent Lokniti CSDS survey has some interesting insights here. Less than 2 years after demonetisation dealt a massive blow to India's informal economy, voters refrained from punishing the government for it in the 2019 elections. Indeed, according to the Lokniti CSDS survey, in 2019, only 17% of respondents found that the biggest issues in India were economic. In other words, only 17% felt that the biggest issues in India were unemployment, poverty, and inflation. However, with prolonged high inflation due to the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war, sustained high unemployment levels since before the pandemic, and no growth in income levels for most Indians, the 2023 version of the survey has very different results. In the latest edition of the survey, a whopping 70%, that's 70, of the people said either unemployment, poverty, or inflation were the biggest issues the nation was facing. Notably, 22% of the people said that their economic situation became worse compared to 4 years previously, up from 15% in 2019. The RBI also comes out with two survey-based indices, the Current Situation Index and the Future Expectations Index. Both show that the consumer confidence levels about the present and about the future are lower than they were pre-demonetization. In other words, the people aren't seeing their fortunes rise compared to the past and aren't as hopeful about the future either. India's post-pandemic economic policy has been a sensible one. Hopefully, the government won't now throw that away looking for some quick fix ways to change the mood of the people, but that hurts the government's finances. That's all from me. Thank you so much for watching.